Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. I am super excited to share a quick and easy project with you today using a stencil, a layered stencil, and a 3D embossing folder from Altenew called Woodland Path. So when I saw this, I just thought it was beautiful. I love outdoor type themes of stamps, and also really am a fan of mushrooms. I have to share. Every time I see something with a mushroom on it, I gravitate towards it. So I have 4 cards for you today. We're going to start out very simply. This first card is using just the layered stencil. You can buy these individually, the stencils and the embossing folder, but I am linking to the set, so it has all 3 in them. But you can find all the options on Altenew's website. So I'm using a bunch of Distress Oxide inks for this, but you could use any of your favorite inks that you like to use for coloring. And I'm using a blending tool with the foam applicator to put my color down. So you will see that I'm using some low-tack tape to cover up some of those areas just because they are close together. And if you want to do different colors on your leaves, you want to make sure that you don't, mix your colors. So I'm just using that low-tack tape to cover up areas that I want to make sure, I want to keep clean for separate colors. This is a 3 stencil set, and there's no separate layers like if we were going to do any kind of shading. But as I'll show you with this, it's super easy to do shading. You don't need to have that, you don't need to have stencils particularly to do that. You can do that on your own, and that'll be coming up here in just a minute. You'll be able to see that. I am using a cloth to clean in between each of the applications of ink. And of course, Distress Oxides are a little bit of a wetter ink. It probably doesn't matter what you use unless you used an archival, which would dry very quickly on the glass, not the glass, but the plastic of the stencil. But most other inks are going to sit on top. And so that you don't, end up dragging those colors into another color or into an area that you don't want it to be in. That's why I'm using that cloth to clean off, and then also that low-tack tape. So I'm doing a little bit of shading here, as you'll see, but I'm coming in with some of my Altenew mini ink cubes and some of these smaller blending brushes, so I can go in and add a little bit of shading. So all I'm doing is using a darker color, coming in on, you can do this from the top down, from the left to the right to the left, however, the shadow would be hitting, or the sun would hit and create shadow. So that's kind of what I'm doing, just using 2 colors, or just creating a blend. On leaves, I really like to use a little bit of a darker color down towards the stem area. And even if you were doing a floral image, you might do bring a darker color in, on the inner parts of the petal, right? And you would get a little bit of a darker color there. So I'm not doing anything dramatic with my shading, but when this is finished, you'll be able to see that really adding some additional colors really adds some depth to the piece. So this is completely flat. I've not used the embossing folder. I am coming back in and using a white gel pen to add some little dots onto the mushrooms onto the caps of the mushrooms, and then also just a little bit on the side of the leaves, on the top of the acorns. And I have to tell you, a little bit of that white gel pen just really makes everything pop. So this is a really simple, basically it's a 1-layer card. You'll see I added some extra cardstock behind my cream panel, but I'm just using, this is you can see a little bit of the stitching there. It's just a real simple die cut to make a little bit of a smaller panel there. And then I just stamped a sentiment right on that 1 layer. And I do have all of the stamp sets that I use. You'll see that in the description below. So just adding a little bit of green behind this, and then go ahead and attaching that onto the card base. And you don't need this. I think if you use some foam tape and pop that up on a cream card, card base, that would look really good as well. But I like the addition of that green, and you've got yourself a pretty quick and easy one layer card. I did add a few of these puffy hearts stickers, which I just love these. And there you go. Card number 1 is done. So let's get on to the second card. Now I'm using the 3D embossing folder, and I've got some Hero Arts white pigment ink. Look at how beautiful that 3D is. I mean, you could leave it just like that and be done. But I'm going to go back in and use my stencils again, using my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station just to hold everything in place. This is a great tool to use when you're using stencils and trying to get some color on. So I'm laying down some of this white ink, and that's going to go, I'm going to use that for all 3 of my stencils. And you could use like a very gentle hand and kind of go over the top of this with the white ink, really, and that really makes those images pop. But I want to get a really good layer down, and so I think using the stencil helps. You don't have to be as careful, right? And it's keeping my white ink right where I want it to be. So the reason I'm using the white ink is that this stays wet for a decent amount of time. And I am going to go in with some rose gold embossing powder. And I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use some of this, so I'm kind of sprinkling it on here and there. I'm not being super careful. I do not want this fully covered. So what I tend to do is I flick it with, underneath the cardstock. I'll do a flicking motion, and that's going to make a lot of that embossing powder come off, except for the areas that are still really wet. And then I'm going in with an embossing pen, and I'm just going around. You can see there's no, I'm not being super careful with anything. I'm trying not to go anywhere that there's already embossing powder, but this is giving me some of that gold embossing powder in specific areas, along the edges of the mushroom or the leaf, for example. And then you'll see what this looks like. And I kind of found this accidentally. I was just playing around and trying some stuff out with the white ink, and ended up like trying to do some gold embossing, but it didn't really stick very well. And I loved this highlight in between, or this combo in between of the white and a little bit of the gold on the edges. So now I went back in with some little splotty dotties using some metallic gold watercolors, and I did a little bit of the green. So if you're going to remake this card, don't do what I did. It was way too much gold. I mean, it was fine in the end. It worked out okay, but I did not love it. And the original card that I made without all the splotty dotties, I liked a little bit more. And then I went back in with the green, and when you dried it, you really couldn't see it that much. And I think it's kind of a lot of gold. But anyway, and then I have this nice die cut that says Hey Sunshine, and the hay is embossed in gold, and then the sunshine is in a dark green. And then I just popped that up with some foam tape. So that is card number 2, and now we're on to card number 3. And this is going to go super fast because I have again embossed this onto just plain white cardstock, and then we're doing some Copic coloring. So the reason it's going fast is you would get bored just sitting here watching me color. I would not claim to be a Copic expert, even though I did take a class a long time ago. But I tend to use very similarly to what you saw me do with the Distress inks. It's kind of the same way that I color with Copic markers. So I'm looking to make a highlight, either in the middle or on one edge, the left or the right edge, and a little bit darker, around the cap of the mushroom or along one side. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. I am using a mixture of Copics, and then you can get some of these alcohol markers from Hobby Lobby for, I think they're $3 a piece, and they are fantastic, and the colors are very close to your Copic. So I find if I run out of a color for my Copic markers, I'll just bring it with me to Hobby Lobby and match it up and get really similar stuff. And I'm a huge Copic marker fan, but seriously, they're expensive. So once I found the Hobby Lobby stuff, I pretty much use those all the time. I do have to apologize also. There's a few times with this card I'm a little bit out of frame. And so I tend to notice that, and you'll see me pull the card back down when I notice I've gotten a little too high there. So what I'm going to do with the Copic coloring is just show you, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I will show you the different colors that I used on the leaves. So you can see I used even some navy blue on these, some of the leaves. And I know I'm going fast, sorry for that. I will try to get those colors together and put them in the description. But here's my finished card, and now I'm going to go back in with that white gel pen again. So because I'm using the embossing folder, there are already some indentations and some raised areas on that image, and so you can just go over those with your white gel pen and highlight those a little bit. There's no dots specifically on the mushroom caps, but there's kind of these little squiggly lines, and you could highlight that as well and make that show up. But like on the acorns, where I just did that white, there are some little hatch marks. So I'm just basically copying what's already, there in the embossing folder. And then I did add some onto the leaves as well. So all I did here, I trimmed that down a little bit so that I could add this navy blue piece behind my colored piece and just mounted that onto my card base. I think this one is my favorite. I really like the way this one turned out. And then I have a sentiment. This is from a great stamp set. So it has all these sentiments. You can just do one big stamp and then run it through with the dies. And it cuts out all these different phrases that you can just build and put together. So I have those ready to go, putting those down with some double-sided tape. And then this card is pretty much done. So, and I really like the black there, that stark black with the pretty colors in the Copic markers, with the Copic markers, my Hobby Lobby markers. And card 3 is done, and now we're on to the final card. So this is a spotlight card. So I have run 2 pieces through the embossing folder. One, I, kind of picked this selection that I wanted to use a die cut circle, and that's just a spellbinder circle, but there's tons of them. And then I'm going to go ahead in with my smaller blending brushes. I'm not going to do a ton of blending on this, just a little bit, and that is because I don't, this is just a portion of that embossed image that's going to be layered over my card base, which you saw right at the beginning. So just going in and coloring again. You can use a cloth like this to clean off your these blending brushes, so you don't need to have 3 different brushes for green, for example. So if you just rub that real hard against that kind of rough towel, you can remove it, and I basically use one blending brush for my greens, one for my blues, etc. Because I just have a few of those. I actually really prefer the foam blending tool from Ranger. Most of the time I think you get better coverage, but these work really well when you have a stencil like this and kind of some small areas that you're trying to get in. So I'm just using I use my finger there to cover up that one spot so that, because that's a little bit of a different color that I have showing there, the leaf. So I just use my finger to cover it up, but you could use that low-tack tape like I did for the first card. So also want to mention at the very last slide that's going to pop up at the end of this video, my Etsy store. So I've been doing some good sales over there. It has a lot of used craft supplies, but super cheap, $5-10 on almost everything that's in the store. So there's nearly 100 items in there. I have more to add, which I'll probably do over the holidays, but definitely check that out. The link is listed. The name of the store is Paper Petals, and so you could just search that on Etsy as well. All right, so that is finished. I am going in with my white gel pen again, it just adds something, right? I don't know, makes it, gives it a little bit of something extra. So now I am, for this card, I'm kind of following those little squiggles that are already in the embossed image instead of creating the circles, so you can see a little bit about what that looks like. So I have this great stamp from, I think it's Honeybee Stamps, and there's a great big die that goes with it, but there's some nice little sentiments as well that you can mix and match. So I really like those a lot. And then you will see the mistake that I made. So I do have some green behind this, just a little bit bigger circle, very similar to what I did before. But when I attach this, which I did not realize this until afterwards, my thank you is super crooked. So I kind of didn't realize the mushroom was at such an angle like that. So all I did was restamp the sentiment onto another piece of cardstock, put some double-sided tape down, or you could just do it flat, and added that right on top, and you can't even tell. And then, of course, that's lined up really well with the plain embossed image behind. And then I just added a few little gems there, and card number 4 is done. Look how quick and easy that was. So hope you enjoyed the cards today, and head on over to my blog for more details, and that's where you can find me. Everything is listed there. Thanks so much, and happy crafting.